सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। So we continue exploring Madhurashtakam today. Now, yesterday we started with the importance of actually having an interest in the stories. Not dismissing it, saying this is just for kids, but what can we glean from it as adults? Because when it comes to a seeker's journey, as much as they focus on that subtle, highest philosophy, frankly, it does get mundane after a while. There's need for some kind of entertainment to keep this mind occupied, to give it a break from the vichara. So then I turn on the TV. The TV's filled with such good, sattvic, amazing entertainment, right? No? So even in those days, when this knowledge was being passed down, we're talking hundreds of years ago, that objection would come up. That in this vyavaharik, day-to-day transactional world, sources of entertainment, where I look to for a break from this knowledge, that only corrupts my mind or takes me away from this sattvic environment, what am I to do? The acharyas would say, Puranas and Itihasas, this is the audio-visual of what the Upanishads are. For any endeavor that's public, audio-visual is necessary. That's why I don't call them AV Sevaks, I call them AV Devatas. That's what they are, essentially, with what they do. Without them, there is no voice for me, right? So that audio-visual component of the Shastra is necessary for me to revel in it. Now, there are different layers to this as well. Some people see these itihasas, Puranas, as mere entertainment. They are fictional, they're for a moral purpose, but they didn't really happen. Come on. Boar lifting the earth out of water. How can these things make sense? There's no way it's real. Some have a slightly pseudo-refined view on top of that. They say this Bhagavan Rama, Bhagavan Krishna may have been real, but they were kings or they were some entities. Over the generations, they've been exalted to the status of Bhagavan. They've been given that divine status. They were just ordinary. They could have been great leaders, but they've been elevated. That's one view. All of that is nonsense. There is no way I come to this state of understanding this true knowledge if I don't consider all of this as true. There's absolutely no way. For instance, there's one argument made. Even if these form of Bhagavans weren't real, let's suppose they weren't real, would that change the message of the Upanishads or Vedas? Whether Bhagavan Krishna existed or not, does that change the knowledge of the Upanishads? It doesn't. It remains the same. By that argument, doesn't it not matter whether they're real or not? But then the way we reconcile that objection is, there is a canon listing of the 108 Upanishads known to us today. The names of those. That comes in the Mauktika Upanishad. It's a dialogue between Bhagavan Shri Ramchandraji and Hanumanji is where that comes. Now, if they're both not real, they're the ones discussing this list of Upanishads, it's false then, isn't it? So the very veracity of our knowledge rests in the Itihasas and Puranas as well. We can't separate the two and say that this knowledge aspect in philosophy and that highest knowledge is real, but then Puranas, Itihasas are false, they're just there for a purpose. That is a lack of a comprehensive view there. So for a true sadhaka, They take it as real. And the next step on top of understanding it as real is, how do these accounts help me and aid me as a sadhaka? What do I extract from these to help me grow my spiritual personality on this quest as a sadhaka? So with that, we look at the second shloka today. I'll just sing this second verse. Vachanam madhuram charitam madhuram vasanam madhuram valitam madhuram chalitam madhuram brahmitam madhuram madhuradhipate rakhilam madhuram madhuradhipate rakhilam madhuram. So we went through a few of these yesterday, starting at Vachanam. So today we come to Chalitam, his movements. Before we saw his movements again when it came to Gamanam. That's how he carries himself, his countenance, his gait, his dynamic walk. It's given in Bhagavatam. Bhagavan Sri Krishna's walk was like that of an elephant. Certain dynamic people, you can tell their status by the way they walk and carry themselves. There was one sage in India, his name was Swami Govindagiri, I think was his name. So he was a contemporary of Gurudev, much older than him, but they were around at the same time. So a respected Swami, and he was blind in his later stages. So Gurudev went to go visit him, and as he's approaching, the Swami has not been told Gurudev is even coming. He says, Chinmaya, is that you? That's what he says. Gurudev was surprised. How do you know it's me? Anyone could have come. How do you know it's me? He said, I could hear your footsteps. Only you are the only sadhu I know that walks like a military general. That's how Gurudev would walk, anywhere he went. And with those wooden padukas the way they are, that's the sound that it makes then. You're the only one that walks that way. By someone's walk, just by hearing it or just by seeing it, we understand what their status is. They carry themselves with this certain flair, one that's missing in any ordinary person. And Bhagavan carries himself with that flair. So then chalitam, movements. The way I conduct myself physically can still deceive people from what my true personality is. When it comes to public speaking, for instance, 90% of the confidence is faking it, honestly. No one walks on a stage, no matter how many times they've done it, completely confident. 90% of it is just acting like you know what you're doing. 10% maybe a little bit of knowledge that's there, truly speaking. So fake it till you make it, that's one kind of a view. But for the person who is truly dynamic, they do not feel insecure in any moment then. And that security doesn't come from how much wealth they have or who they control. None of that is the source of that security. It's truly understanding that whatever purpose they want to achieve, they are on track to achieve that. That gives them the confidence that the way I carry myself is the way I want to project myself. There's no facade in how they carry themselves. Now, with this Chalita movement, it's so interesting to see the movements in Bhagavan Sri Krishna's life. From Vrindavan to Mathura for that purpose of vanquishing Kamsa. Life in Vrindavan, life in Gokula was amazingly beautiful and so chilled out, as the kids would say. There was no worry to deal with. He was vanquishing asuras as they came, but enjoying time with the gopas and the gopis and the cows was the most wonderful feeling. We had a lock-in recently, the middle school lock-in. I felt like a real gopala there. 40 middle schoolers, it was like herding cows the entire time. There's the just basic things we have to do. First is the bowling, then dinner, then laser tag in the arcades, right, in that place. You have to make sure, these are all 6th through 8th graders. None of them can get lost, right? We can't have any more lock-ins if a kid gets lost at main event. And none of them can go missing or this way or that way. So in bowling, we keep doing a count, stand still, I want to count you. Counting them, making sure they're right there. Then one kid will come up, I want water. That's the worst statement, because every other kid wants water. Everyone's dying of thirst at that moment. One kid says, Hadiji, I have to go to the bathroom. Instantly, every other bladder is full right there. They all have to go to the bathroom. So assigning them one uncle, please take them, make sure they all come back. He says, okay, I'll do that. So different Gopalas are there then. I'm the chief Gopala, the other ones are also helping out. They take them, then they come back. Then herding them all to dinner. On the way to walking where the food thing is, one of them sees an arcade game, starts walking. No, back here. Bringing them back. But that's the extent of the work that's necessary. It's a very chilled out existence. I would take that over having to teach the kids any day. That takes a lot more effort. This is a sit, stand, like that. But from there going to Mathura, and after that, his entire life drastically changed. Through no choice of his own. Being attacked by Jarasandha 18 times or so, he said, let me build my fort in Dwaraka. Not as a kingmaker still, but he said, let me build that fort in Dwaraka. And then Jarasandha started ridiculing him, saying, look at you running away from a fight. A true Kshatriya, no matter what, stands up for a fight when necessary. They don't run away like this. Are you even a man? Is what Jarasandha calls out. Now, what does Bhagavan say at that moment? Navai shura vikatyante darshayanti eva paurusham. This is a beautiful statement he makes. That the valiant never brag, they only exhibit their manliness through action then. Meaning those people who bark about themselves, saying, I'm so great, I can do this, I can do that. God ke dikho. No need to talk about it, show me what you're made of. That was Bhagavan's message throughout his entire Leela. Talk is cheap, that which anyone can do. Show me what you're going to do. Character, charitam, is where it really lies. At the end of Tulsi Ramayana, end of the battle where Bhagavan Sri Ramchandraji is about to vanquish Ravana, he still gives him a chance to leave up until the very end. The moment where he's about to hit that final arrow, he says to him, if you hand over Sita Devi to me right now, we can end this war, go our separate ways, and you can still live. Up until that moment, he's given him that chance. And what he says to Ravana at that moment is really beautiful. He says there are three kinds of people in the world. There's one person who is like a tree that only gives fruits. Okay? A tree that only gives fruits. There's another person who's like a tree that only gives flowers. And there's a third type of person who's like a tree that gives fruits and flowers. It must have seemed weird to Ravana. You're about to kill me, now you're throwing riddles at me, like a Sunday paper. What is this? But he explains himself. He says the person who is like a tree that only gives flowers, they're the person that talk very floweringly. Vachitam pushpitam vacham, right? That comes in Bhagavad Gita. But what they actually do, what fruit they produce, the result of their actions is really nothing. They're just the bravado, just bloviating. Puffery is all it is. It's a tree that just gives flowers. Because flowers are beautiful. We even offer them in puja. If you're hungry and dying of hunger, can you eat it and save yourself? You want a fruit at that time. It's like in one Indian film, to woo the heroine, he doesn't know the ways of reaching a woman's heart. He gives her a watermelon, a giant watermelon, and says, I give this to you. And she says, what is this nonsense? And his friend says, you're supposed to give flowers or something beautiful. He says, why? Flowers die anyway. A melon is good for strength. At least that will save you. That's beneficial in some way, fills your stomach. How can you fill your stomach with flowers? So essentially, I know everyone loves flowers in a garland or in any way. Really no use. Besides looking beautiful, no use there. So the person who is useless like that bloviates and talks, really like a tree that only gives flowers. Second type of person, like a tree that gives fruits and flowers. Their actions produce fruits, but God, they talk a lot about it. One small thing they do, everyone has to know it. Because think about it, there's that riddle, right? If a tree falls in the woods, no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. My riddle is, if I do a good deed and no one's there to know about it, did I really do that good deed? Has to be known. In any workplace, imagine the work you do, you don't talk about it. You just do it and get on with your day. Do you rise in the company? It's hard to if you don't talk about it. You got to let people know. That's why one of my favorite comics of all time, it came in the New Yorker once. There's a kid showing his dad his report card. It's F's all the way down. The dad's glaring at him. The kid's statement is, Dad, you always say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Dad must have been talking like that at home all the time, saying at work, I get no respect. The people that BS around, they're the ones that rise. So he says, you always say that. That must be the truth then. So a person who is like a tree that gives flowers and fruits, the productiveness is there. And there's also a lot of talk as well. Now there's the third kind of person. A tree that does not produce any flowers, only fruits. No need for false bravado. No need for validation or attention. Simply producing those results that nourish everyone, that help everyone. What inspires them is simply working to do that again and again. And if that can be in service of Bhagavan, that is the greatest action. So again, Bhagavan Krishna's response to Jarasandha is, there is no need to brag about anything that's done. Simply do it, doing what the situation demands, not only seeing what my capacity is. Now, one other beautiful thing about his Leela is the way he seamlessly transitioned from one stage in life to the other without any kind of resistance or any obstacle in his way. The sad irony is, when we're kids, we see that people who are older than us, they can drive. They can go places without their parents. All of these cool things. We can't wait to grow up. And then once we're 40 or 50 years old, we think, oh man, those days in college were the best. We always want to go back in time. And then once you get to 60 or 70, you think, when is this going to end? Is what it is. I'm not saying this is to deject you, just going by what you've told me. All of you have talked to me about these things. I'm a mirror, okay? I'm just reflecting it back to you. That's all this is. That's all this is. So these are the statements that come about. The sad truth is, when we're young, we want to be old. When we're old, we want to be young. Never enjoying the stage that we're in. And when does this get real? When you're young, you say, when I grow up, I want to do this. Or people ask you, when you grow up, what you want to be. Strangely, at a certain point, people stop asking, what do you want to do when you grow up? This happens about 25 or 30, because by that age, you're grown up. You should be doing what you set your mind on. There is no aspiration at that point of when I get older. The time is now. If I'm 40 and I'm still thinking, someday I want to do this, maybe I'll do that, they say I haven't found my purpose in life at that point. It's a very sad state to be in. Anxiety-inducing for the person and for the people that we depend on, really. Anxiety-inducing for them as well. For the parents, when the kid graduates college, the parents say, hey, come back and move in with us. Spend time with us, move back in, we'll help you out. If that sustains for 15 years and this kid is 40 now, even the parents are like, hey, maybe you want to move out now. Maybe you want to go somewhere. The dependence gets way too much then. So seamless transitions in these phases of life. Now, with these seamless transitions in life comes understanding which opportunities have to be taken when. Before we had smartphones, so around before 2005, 2006, the craze was finding a good digital camera. SLR, all these types of things were coming out. Now, people sometimes spend a year or two finding that good camera. Has to be a good deal, good quality, so Black Friday, say all these different things. Now, someone very intelligent, I heard say something once, an older gentleman at the time. He said, yeah, you may find the good deal in a year or two. In that time, your kids are going to get older, though. The whole point of that camera is what? Capturing those memories at that stage of life for posterity. What's the use of finding a good deal on a camera if your kids are growing up, you don't capture those memories? What is the purpose of getting it Why delay? Why not make that transition? Take advantage of the situation now. Bhagavan Krishna lived that message at every single stage. There was no losing the present because anxiety of the future was there. There was no losing the present because regrets from the past were there. That is the most basic message he gives for happiness. Now, as he went through these stages, the ridicule was also there. That here you are ensconced in Dvaraka, by the sea, this fortress that you have, away from those trying to attack you, you ran away like that. Again, even when facing ridicule, he did what was right. That bloodshed was not what was required at that moment. He said there will be a big war coming up, then I will take care of all of these people. Secondly, he said Jarasanda's killing has to be done in a very special way. He charged Bhima with doing that and reestablishing dharma. So an action has the right motive behind it, the right technique of doing it. Timing is also equally important. When do I decide to act? That's something we seldom think about. Very, very important to look at, though. So, chalitam madhuram. Then comes brahmitam madhuram. Taking a pilgrimage, wandering about, his roaming is also sweet, the way he wanders and moves. So there were times with the Gopa boys, he would go on these little pilgrimages around the different villages and going around. Just being one with that nature. No care in the world at that point. Where the innocence of a child is, where they can wake up in the morning, not know how the day is going to turn out. When's the last time we've woken up in the morning not knowing how the day is going to be? First of all, not with an alarm, just naturally waking up, whenever that is, but not knowing what to expect that day is the most awesome feeling to have. Where there is no expectation that this has to be there, that has to be there, whichever way life comes to me that day, I'll take it. If you ask the Bhavihar kids, what is your perfect day? We did this exercise. What is the most perfect day that you can have? Second graders, we did this. So they listed everything. For breakfast, I want ice cream on top of waffles. It always comes to food, and breakfast has to be candy, waffle, something like that. Sugar high, that makes the parents go crazy. That's what they world of objects that I find myself in, let me only follow your feet. Is that second? That's all. One is gratitude, the other is give me that strength to stay on this path so that I will serve you. But then we have to ask for things as well, don't we? We need certain things. That'll come later on today. We'll look at it. So brahmitam, that carefree wandering that's there, is that innocence, childlike innocence of Bhagavan. There's a big difference between childlike and childish. Very big difference. They sound similar. Childish and childlike have a very big gulf between them. Childish is behaving in a way that is not fitting for a person in that age. Immature-wise. When we have our Labor Day camps, everyone becomes childish at that time. We had the kids, saying, we did the mudslides and whatever, and then wash yourself off. Here's the hose. Wash, just simply spray water and circle. These guys went, and the people who were volunteers that are minding their own business, not doing anything, just working, they went and sprayed them with water. I went to the high school kids, how old are you? Is what I asked them. And they said, oh, we're 16. I said, those are rhetorical, you don't understand what I'm saying. I'm not asking you how old you are. I'm saying that when I say how old are you, that means for the action that you're doing in the age that you are, you're like as tall as a tree, but doing something childish like this, how is that going together at all? That was my point that I was trying to make. What childishness is that? Childlike is what though? Ashitoshak, easily amused by the smallest things. Not holding grudges. You have 2 5-year-olds or 4-year-olds that are playing. One kid takes a crayon from the other. He cries and he hits the other kid. They both cry. Within 5 minutes, though, they're laughing and playing again, right away. And we say children are so immature, right? Now look at us as adults. One feud that we have, and for years afterwards, that still persists. I heard one story about a lady who got in a fight with a friend. You know, when friendships are close, I'm experiencing this now, you share food with each other, so you have your dabba, you have their dabbas, they have your dabbas, things like that are there, right? Where I'm very clear, I always try to give dabbas back to the ones that bring them. Or else, to give the dabbas back, I have to take one more birth. To receive them, you have to take one more birth also. Right? It's not. Lena has to happen. Lena, dabba, very clear about giving their dabbas back. But when they're friends, you invariably find their cutlery and stuff at your house, yours and theirs. Two aunties got in a fight. Terrible fight. They ended up mailing their dabbas to each other. That's how bad it got. Could not even meet. I know it sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? This really happened. I heard it straight from the auntie's mouth. That they had to mail it to each other. They live in the same city, but Amazon packaging courier it to each other. Imagine the hatred there. Now, usually one practice that I love it when some people follow this, when you return any dabba, it's never empty in our culture. You fill it with something. In this situation, whatever it was filled with, I would throw it away. I wouldn't eat it because, when your enemy gives you something to eat, you got to be really, really careful. Have your husband taste test it first. If he's fine, then you can consume. So, us adults, smart, mature, educated, intellectual adults, we're the ones that hold these grudges for lives like this. Decades. We forget why we even fought with the person, but I don't like them, we hold on to that grudge. Childlike innocence then is seeing that benefit of doubt in people, forgive freely. Life is too short for me to have these kinds of feelings about someone. Brahmitam Madhurashtakam. Venu. Next thing we see is Venu Madhurashtakam. Is flute. In nritya, in dance, there are different symbols that we have, different mudras, expressions that they do for each of the deities. Bhagavan Ramji is what? Thumbs up, arrow like this. Bhagavan Ganesha. I've seen two. I've seen some, the belly, shaming him, fat shaming him is one of them. Another is shaming him for the way his nose looks. Insulting at the most, or the big giant, like his ears like that. There's even that English version, right? Kanpo, Boki, Ganapati, right? Bhagavan Krishna, it's the universal song and dance. Flute is what is shown. That is the most recognizable feature of Bhagavan Krishna. In Bhagavatam, we find something incredibly beautiful. We find one stuti called the Venu Stuti, dedicated solely to his flute and his music. How it enchants. Because the senses being enchanted is very easy for a human being. In Viveka Chudamani's example comes, where to capture a certain animal's attention, there are different senses they use to capture that animal's attention. For example, when it comes to a moth, how does a moth meet its end usually? Light is very attractive to it. One sense of sight, the moth loses itself completely. When it comes to the sense of touch, do you know how elephants are captured by hunters? An elephant loves to feel another elephant. So what they do is, they'll put female elephant on one side. To capture the male, they'll put a female elephant on one side. They'll dig a giant hole, big enough to hold an elephant. This is for the ivory, they do this. As the elephant sees it, it doesn't even look where it's walking, just wants to go touch the other elephant, falls in, is captured. Sense of touch is so alluring. For a fish, what is the biggest sense? Taste. That's why when fishermen go out there, it's either live bait like worms. I don't know why it would be attracted to eat a worm. But sometimes there's those little toys, right? Those brightly colored they look attractive, and it wants to go eat it, hook, line, and sinker, and it's caught. How is a deer caught? Music. They'll play a beautiful sound, the deer perks up and goes towards it, and that's how the deer is captured. Now the argument in Viveka Chudamani, the rhetorical, funny question is, each of these animals has one sense weakness that makes it get captured. The human being, which sense is it that makes us get captured? Every darn one of them. This mighty intellectual human. Because we like ourselves to think of ourselves as superior to animals, don't we? We've made it out of the food chain. We have no predators. The only predator to a human is another fellow human that can kill him. There's no other animal that can really take us down. As a community, we've done well for ourselves in that way. Good job, humans. But at the same time, in the wild, without any of the mechanics that we have, throw a human naked and without any kind of weapons into the jungle, how long will he survive? He'll be the first animal taken down. Every other animal looking at the human, first prayer they will have is, Brahma Pranam Brahma, ready to go and eat that human being. So essentially, we are the weakest of any species, yet we are the most powerful. That is only because of that intellectual capability. But again, we fall for every sense pleasure. So the beauty of this Manu Gita is that which attracts the senses can really sink the human being so easily. In this situation, what do we find? The beauty of Bhagavan Sri Krishna's flute, that simplicity of that music enraptures the mind, takes it to greater heights then. Bhagavan Krishna, one of his names is Kama Janakaya Namaha. The one who elicits that desire only for sattva in a disciple, that is Bhagavan Sri Krishna. And if you think about it, the flute is the least complicated instrument. You ever go to a Hindustani concert where they have harmony? I've never been to a concert where the first half an hour has not been that person tuning the harmonium. And the people that don't really know music, the way you can tell who they are is, they'll finish tuning the harmonium. Bam, bam, bam. People will start clapping. They think it's a musical piece that happened. It might as well be, it lasted so long, but they're very using just tuning it like that. It's a very complicated instrument to tune and to play and everything. Other instruments, tabla has to be the right, you have to hit the thing and then it has to be the right way. Flute is the simplest one, where it's simply like a bamboo or a reed like this. The holes are on the top, one hole to blow the air into. The sound is simply manipulated by the fingers. That's all it is. That's how simple that instrument is. I mean, that worship of Bhagavan, to be enraptured by that divinity, it's not that it takes some great effort there. The beauty and simplicity is what attracts that mind. Again, Sanatana Dharma is not some mystical philosophy where big tantras have to be done and seeing lights and flashes and all this. That's not what our religion is. It is simply that pure love for that Bhagavan, growing and growing in the simplest of ways. After Venu, we find Renuhu. The dust of his feet is sweet. The dust of Bhagavan's feet comes in many of our accounts in the Itihasas and Puranas. Most famously, Kevat Prasanga in Tulsi Ramayana, where Bhagavan Sri Ramchandra Ji is now leaving Ayodhya. And that day there is one ferryman who is waiting for him there. And when he approaches, about to get in the boat, stops him right there. He says, "Let me wash your feet before you get in the boat." He says, "Why?" He says, "I've heard some things about you." Okay, what have you heard? That you stepped on a stone recently. It turned into a beautiful woman who was born out of that stone. That scares me. A pretty cool thing that you did, but it scares me. My entire living that I earn is from this boat, taking it back and forth. That's my one skill set I have. In my LinkedIn profile, it says ferrying people across, that's it. I don't have any more skills than that. Okay? This is all I have. The dust of your feet on my boat turns my boat into a woman. My woman will kill me if that happens. So I need to wash your feet before you get in. Lakshmanji is saying, what is this nonsense? Lakshmanji gets really mad whenever Ramji is put in any kind of circumstance like this. When he thinks something like a nonsense talk going on, he gets infuriated at that moment. So he's saying, hey, what is this? Come on. Ramji said, no. Chandra, let him wash my feet, let me get there. Now, what is it about the dust of Bhagavan's feet? If we go to places like Mathura, Vrindavan, Dwarka, even today, the feeling and idea there is not that, okay, there was some Krishna who stayed here at some point. It is the dust of that Bhagavan's feet that was there at that time is still there today. This is what's called a Punya Kshetra. Punya Kshetra arises because of the people that have lived there and treaded in those places. Whether it is the forms of Bhagavan we find in the accounts of our Hindu history, whether it's these Santa Mahatmas that have stayed at these places, their presence is what makes it that Punyasthala. And you can feel that whenever you go somewhere. We have our ashram here. The original ashram built in Chinmaya Mission in the West was the ashram Krishnalaya in Piercy. The most beautiful place in that entire ashram, where I spent most of my time when I went, is Puja Gurudev's Kutia, his humble house there. They preserved it just as it was when he left it. There's a Time magazine that sits on a desk there, dated 1992. The bed is the same bed, everything remains the same. Now, I went to Krishnalaya in 2013, first batch of the Youth Empowerment Program. The next time I ever went there was 10 years later, this summer, just a few months ago. And that same magic I felt when I walked in there. For those of us who have never met Puja Gurudev, I never believed in this whole feeling someone's presence and everything. I found that to be a little too mystical. That never really attracted me. But being there for the first time, it's a different feeling. A sense of calm, serenity that comes over you. That is because when great people inhabit a place, that's the result there. When good karmas are done, when that sadhana is done, that sanctifies a place. Now the opposite is also true. Where there is licentiousness, where there is greed, where there is all of this, the place that's there and the people who inhabit it for generations to come, they suffer because of it. When I was in the brahmachari training course, the first week, we were meeting other brahmacharis, getting to know them, our fellow classmates. Many of them are from India, just a few are international. So we're talking, and one of them said, I'm from Rajasthan. I used to work at a bank as a bank manager. Last 6 months, I've been living at an ashram in Rajasthan, near Udaipur, just to get ready for this course. Some basic sadhanas and things to get ready. Maharaj, where were you the past 1 year or so? I said I was in a city in America working. The city is called Las Vegas. Which is true. I worked there for a little bit before going to the course. He says, oh, okay. Kabhi suna nahi, sir. They didn't know what it was. Another person sitting next to me was American, though. He looked at me and said, what the heck? What were you doing there? I was there, working in finance there. But the sad truth is, you look at the quality of the school system in that Las Vegas area, you look at the drug and alcohol problems, all of these things, they skyrocket. Just as much as a Punya Kshetra can be there, Papa Kshetra is also true. We're in an area, if greed, lust, all of this is what dominates, it's no wonder that the environment turns out that way as well. And the people that live there get affected by it through no fault of their own. I'd meet people there, talking and just, wherever I was. And one thing was, in Dallas, for instance, when kids reach the age of 18, 19, they're itching to get out. And Texas is the greatest place on earth, back me up, guys. But they want to get out somewhere, do something, get away from that, make something. Talking to people the same age in Las Vegas, there is no such itcha to go and do something. They're just like, yeah, I was born here, I'm working at this fast food place, that's my life. Let's see. There was no dynamism in it. That's the result of that Papa Kshetra mentality. That does happen. So, the dust of Bhagavan's feet, then, is simply that glory of that Punya Kshetra. Which is why in any of our Puranas and Itihasas, going to these thalas is seen as such a purificatory act. Now, sometimes we get carried away. Often it says you take a dip in Gangaji, all your sins are washed away. Right? So this whole purifying the mind and everything, Hariji is just saying that for effect here. Has to fill up 1 hour and a half, so he's just saying all that. Let's just go to Gangaji, 1, 2, 3, take 3 dips and we're good. Yes, being in that area does purify. It's not lying. But it should inspire to do no bad karmas going forward. That's what keeps that purification in them. Let these punyasthalas inspire me to lead that noble life. Not that I can go be cleansed of all my sins, and then go and then do whatever I want. That's not the instruction that's given there. So the dust of his feet. Next we see Panihi Pada. His hands are sweet and his feet are sweet. Now there's an Upadesha given in Srimad Bhagavatam near the end, where Shukadev Maharaj expounds on what is the use of this body. How do you consider your body useful? Because how many times have we scolded our kids for a useless fellow? In high school when they wake up at like what time in high school? On the weekends? Does it go to the PMs or is it still in the AM? It goes to the PMs every now and then, doesn't it? Because you only sleep in the AM, so naturally you have to wake up in the PM. That's how it has to work. So we say, oh, you're useless. One phrase that a friend introduced me to is waste body, where you're not doing anything useful. Your body is a waste body. Bhagavatam also says waste body in more beautiful language, but it says if speech is not used to sing Bhagavan's praises, this body is a waste. Speech is a waste. It says that if the hands are not used, Varnihi, not used to serve that Bhagavan, the hands are a waste. If the mind does not constantly remember this Bhagavan, the mind is a waste. If the ears do not hear the sacred stories of his Leela, they are a waste. If the eyes don't see Bhagavan in everything and everyone, they are a waste. In no uncertain terms. So I use my organs of action to procure something, to do something in this world, to make something of myself, to aggrandize, to live merrily. And if that's my whole life, Bhagavan Krishna is saying that is simply a waste of a body. How can seeking happiness be a waste of the body, though? Isn't that true? Our idea is those who enjoy life, you only live once, let's enjoy life to the fullest extent. Those people that take up sadhanas, austerities, satsanga of all things, what nonsense. How can there be happiness in that? It's been branded that way. When I was at Sandipani Sadhanalaya, at the course, we had some chicks from America who visited. And one of them came, I showed them around, talked to them. We were having tea. He said, hey, Bhai, one thing is really interesting to me. I said, what? Everyone here seems so normal. What do you mean? Before I can jump to the conclusion, I have to ask, what do you mean? He said, everyone is just smiling and talking like normal. They're walking around and they're just doing normal things. I said, what did you expect, man? What did you think was going around here? He said, I thought spirituality meant like they're in this trance kind of thing and everything. I said, this is not a zombie apocalypse. That's not crazy. People are normal here. They're happy. When we study, you are the nature of Ananda Swarupa, happiness has to be there, doesn't it? They have to be normal. That's what we've been stamped with. That people who opt for any kind of spiritual pursuit, they must be wired the wrong way. That's why they're going for this. Naturally what people think. And that censuring comes there. Especially living as an Indian community in this country, peer pressure is not just for the kids. Peer pressure goes well into adulthood then. You only want a 4-bedroom house? Oh my god, you peasants, you must be really, really poor. Driving a Camry from 10 years ago? What's wrong with you people? You wore that outfit last Diwali also. Oh my god, are you bankrupt? These things do come up. Because for us, what we see as progress in this transactional world is, what have I amassed? How well am I using it? Do people know that I have these things? These are status markers then. The fact that even being seen that I'm using this body for something else is a priority, that's very, very hard to wrap our heads around. That is not an indictment on anyone. I'm a part of this community, grew up in a vibrant Indian Hindu American community. My journey would not be possible if it were not for the kind of community I was in. At the same time, though, if this kind of a mindset continues, where one generation came here from India simply to survive, is why they work so hard, right? Coming here as students, working in a dining hall at the school. A lot of people do that at university. I told my friends in college, these people you see from India work in the dining hall, watch, within 10 years, I guarantee you they'll all be millionaires through the way that they work. I take great pride in that. Coming from a community that earns the way they do, I take great pride in that. It comes from that hard work. But does that translate to spiritual wealth as well? Or do we lose that as the generations go on? That's a charge that my generation must take up, but we take the cue from the previous generation. That can't be discounted. Both hands have to clap right here to make things happen right. Something to think about. Now we come to one more beautiful Lakshana. Nrityam Madhuram, his dance is beautiful. When Bhagavan Shri Krishna, growing up in Vrindavan, there was the Yamuna river that was flowing nearby. There was a scary element inside that water, a serpent by the name of Kali, with hundreds of hooded heads, like a cobra. It said that there was so much poison Kaliya was pumping into that river that a passerby, if some of that water splashed, they would perish on the spot. That's how pernicious the serpent was. So people would pass away like that. But then Bhagavan Shri Krishna, being who he is, climbed a tall tree and said cannonball and jumped right into that water. So Kaliya, who was probably sleeping at that time underneath the water, must have felt something on it. Heard it first. Now, one interesting thing I want to point out here as an aside. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it's given as Chakshuhu Shrava is the term that's given. That Kaliya Chakshuhu Shrava, through sight, heard Bhagavan Shri Krishna jump in. Why is that important? Scientifically, what we know today is snakes don't have ears, but they still have the stimulus to hear. How? It's behind the eyes, that's how they hear. And in Bhagavatam here, so specifically, Chakshuhu Shrava, listening with the eyes, that's the term that's given. So even in the most basic narration that's given, scientific truths are just sprinkled like that in our Shastra. Meaning they don't make a big deal out of it. This was understood knowledge, general knowledge at that time. So when people say, oh, these are just made up narratives, this and that, look how much truth is contained in them. Look back when they were written. That's one beautiful element right there. So through his eyes, Kaliya hears Bhagavan Shri Krishna and sees him. Now a serpent went around and grabbed Bhagavan Shri Krishna. At this point, Bhagavan is probably less than 5 years old or so. Grabs him completely. Bhagavan, doing his leela, is trying to get out of it, treading the water, playing with the snake. It's given for about an hour is how long he did that. That itself tells you divinity is right there. Have you ever treaded water in a pool? How long? 10 minutes and you feel like you're cramping, you feel like you're sink. Most often when people are lost at sea, these divers and things like that, surfers, when they get put out there, the Coast Guard says this, it's not drowning by not knowing how to swim that kills them. It's not the currents that pull them under either. It's the fatigue that comes from staying above water for so long the body just is exhausted and gives out. Lactic acid seeps into the muscles, they get really stiff, and that's how they drown, sinking and drowning that way. So Bhagavan Krishna, this baby is treading water for an hour like this. Kaliya is feeling tired at this point. So after an hour then, Bhagavan Krishna decides to play Dance Dance Revolution at this point. Where it lights up, you have to put your foot there and dance. Like that, 100 hoods are there and he's dancing on it. And it's a beautiful sight to behold. While he was underwater in there for that hour, treading water and barely seen, the Gopas and the Gopis, Nanda Baba himself thought that he had died. They were crying and so worried and shocked. Balaramji was the only one that said, hey, this is my younger brother, he's fine, nothing's going to happen to him. He recognized his divinity because he was divine himself. He said nothing to fear. Interestingly, so many people were there, none of them jumped in to help Bhagavan Krishna. That's something that's really telling right there. Someone should help out, someone should help out. Okay, no one's actually doing it though. Bravery isn't there. When I did a lifeguard training course with the Boy Scouts, the first thing they told us was, this is not Baywatch. When you see someone in trouble, don't just jump in. Okay? The current could get you. There could be like a live wire in the water that electrocutes you. You have to assess the situation before you go in. So I think all these people were trained that way. They were like, oh, there's danger. No, 2 victims is worse than 1. We love Bhagavan Krishna, but, you know, yeah, nothing we can do. Nothing we can do. So then he starts dancing on Kaliya's hoods. And Kaliya has these gems on his hoods then. So his feet are glistening on there. So his feet appeared like roses at that point, dancing around. So he had enough of his fun then. Danced for a little bit. Now it's time to actually hurt Kaliya and subdue him. At this point, what did Bhagavan think to himself? Tera kya ho gaya, Kaliya? Number's voice first to throat. It has to go really low. It's hard to do. I debated, should I do that or not? It came out. Give me 1 minute. So he said, now I'm going to take care of Kaliya. So with the weight that he has, he is crushing each head of Kaliya with blood splattering everywhere. Now the objection comes up. Bhagavan Krishna is a light baby at this point. What weight are we talking about that's crushing him right now? I recently read, this was a news story, a lady gave birth to a 14-pound baby recently. 14-pound baby. Mothers, is that even, like, can you even fathom that? Isn't that nuts? It's like twice the size of a normal baby. More than twice the size. That's insane. It's a 14-pound baby. So Bhagavan Krishna was not a 14-pound baby. So how is he crushing? What's given in Shastra is because he contains all the lokas in his very body, with the weight of that, he's crushing Kaliya right there. And the beautiful description here is, as the blood is splattering onto Bhagavan's feet, it looks as if there are roses being offered there. Nice red tulips, red roses. That's what it looks like it's decorating on. And so he's doing this. Now, what is Kaliya's response at this point? The irony is, Kaliya was a worshipper of Bhagavan Mahavishnu. So at this point, he's praying. Narayana Bachao. It's Narayana who's stepping on you right now, and he's praying, Narayana, some kid is dancing on me, it really hurts, please save me right now, is what he's praying to. And then all of Kaliya's wives come also. Now, one interesting thing we find. As awful as certain figures in our Hindu history are, their spouses were very high-minded, great bhaktas, good people. Ravana had Mandodari. She said, you kidnapping Sita Devi and doing all of this, that Rama's going to come and kill you. You shouldn't do it. He laughed, ha ha, you will say that, I'll do what I want. Duryodhana's wives also cautioned him from battle. They said, what you're about to embark on is wrong. Kamsa's wives also said the same thing. He dismissed them as well. So men, I'm not going to say it, but you know what I'm trying to say. But in this instance, these women come forward and they say, please spare our husband. Do not destroy him. And they say something that's very prescient here. They say, with what you're doing, Bhagavan, you are blessing Kalia right now. By stepping on him, dancing like this, the fact that you are even intervening in his actions is a blessing. Oftentimes, if Bhagavan were to step in and change someone's plans, we see that as dharma is being established, even choosing that person to stop their actions, Bhagavan even interfering, the touch of his feet on their head, that is even a great blessing. So they first start by saying a prayer of gratitude. Thank you for blessing Kalia. But even when someone commits an offense, the person they depend on should be the first person to forgive them. What a beautiful thing that said. When someone commits an offense, the person they depend on should be that first person to forgive them. Where I gave the example yesterday, right? Your kid drives the car into the fence. How angry do you get? I mean, it depends on the car, of course. Is that your favorite child or not? A lot of different factors. But you do get angry. But you are still, as the parents, the first people to forgive. They depend on you. They get their knowledge from you and everything. You will easily forgive that. No matter how nice the car is or new it is. Like that, the person that depends on them should be the one to forgive. Then finally, Bhagavan Sri Krishna stops. He doesn't kill Kalia. That's a misconception. Simply subdues Kalia. Kalia then with folded hands, or is it snake? Folded something then. He says to Bhagavan, we snakes are born into this yoni, into this kind of a birth, because we are highly tamasic. Forgive me, this is the way I am. And this identification with this snake kind of a body is hard to give up. Tamas is where I am. And this is relevant for humans as well. Tamas is that state of base, lustful desire, indolence, lack of knowledge, lethargy, simply satiating the senses. That is that bottommost layer of evolution. Rajas has some inspiration behind it, but to get some name and fame and be visible, and these are the reasons. Sattva is that highest nature of knowledge, cheerfulness, joy. And to attain that is a step in the process, very difficult to do. But what Kalia says here is so telling, because do I just confine myself and say, this is the way I am, I can't change, I'm going to stay here, or do I make that push to improve? Because what Kalia says at first sounds like an excuse. In this snake body, this is how we are. But then again, you look in our Itihasa Purana, Rakshasas, Asuras, they become great devotees of Bhagavan. We've seen that happen so clearly. Those great devotees who are Asuras like Ravana have still fallen. Prahaladji was an Asura, one of the greatest devotees of Bhagavan. So no matter what birth we find ourselves in, meaning what circumstance we're in, if I say to myself, this is what I am, there is no improvement, I've essentially killed myself at that point. Atmahatya has happened then. When I kill that need of any kind of spiritual evolution, resign myself to my current circumstance, I've effectively ended any hope for growth. That's what I'm being cautioned against here in this section. Now we come to one of our last names to look at today. Sakhyam Madhuram. His friendship is beautiful. The classic story of Sakhyam comes in the episode with Sudama. Most beautiful story that we have. Where Sudama was a poor Brahmana living in very humble means. He was so emaciated you could see his veins. And there was no good clothing for him and his wife. They lived in a humble hut. Even consuming food, finding food and eating to be nourished was difficult to do. So ill health, malnourished, all of this was there. Then at one day, his wife told him, why don't you go see Bhagavan? He was your classmate when you were at the Gurukula. He'll bless you with something because of your friendship. You haven't seen him in so long, but go find him. I guess Rishi Sandipani didn't hold, 10-year class reunions or things like that. So you had to go seek people out to go find him. So he felt very bashful about visiting Bhagavan. He had love for him, he saw him as that supreme being, but his thing was, when you go and visit someone, to take them a gift, to take them something. Something befitting who they are. Not that, oh, I can't give you anything, this is all I have. For their status, you have to give something that's great. He felt bashful that we have nothing even for ourselves, what am I going to give him? So going from house to house, to about 4 houses, his wife procured 4 fistfuls of rice, put that in some rag, tied it up, and said, take this to Bhagavan at least. So he took that. And Bhagavan is relaxing with Rukminiji in the palace. And then he sees Sudama at the gate, runs over there as quickly as he can, and welcomes him in. And he instantly becomes emotional. And no one in the palace has seen Bhagavan this way. Hasitam Madhuram we've seen. Rona Dhona we've never seen from Bhagavan. But he is so choked, overcome with emotion, he requests that they bring in water. But then, Guruji had told us this when he was teaching Bhagavatam, he didn't even need the water. His tears were enough to wash Sudama's feet. And his Brahmana has come, let's give him this grate. And then sits him on a comfortable seat. And then they start talking. Glory days of when they were growing up in the Gurukula. And everyone's surprised right there. Bhagavan Krishna is so respected. He's being respected by the Brahmana, but the way they're talking is so casual. What is going on? Swami Sarveshanandaji, we respect so much. When I was a chick, one of his sannyasi friends came to visit, and then the way they're talking to each other, he's addressing Swamiji, our Swamiji as tu, not up. The chicks, we looked around, what is this? How can someone talk to our Swamiji like this? Later he was he's a friend of mine, sadhu also, stop your nonsense here. But instantly we didn't say anything, we just felt that feeling that, oh, how can someone call him like that? Same feeling right here. Someone's very, very casual with this Sangha, with Bhagavan Sri Krishna. It's funny, growing up in this city, a lot of people know who I am but don't know who I am. Right? They know me as the old me. Seeing me in this garb right here doesn't always make sense. So then we were at a restaurant once, recently, with one of our mission members. I was there. And one person who knew us. Anytime you go to Frisco, anywhere now, or any Indian restaurant, there's bound to be 10 people that know you. So one person came, and he knew that man I was with, talked to him, and said, oh, okay, I heard Brahmacharyaji, and everyone namaste and everything. I knew this person, knew their kids and everything. So I just stayed, and he was very stiff, very formal. All of a sudden I said, hey uncle, I'm this person. This is my parents, this is my thing. He was like, oh, that's you! And all of a sudden you saw the relaxation. Pachiro, how are you? And hug and everything. I mean, when you know someone like that, formalities fall away at that point. Right? That's the blessing and the curse of being here where people know you. So like that, he's being very casual with Bhagavan. And then Bhagavan is up to mischief here. Adharam Madhuram. His lips go into that curl of a smile, and he says, oh Sudama, you've come all the way over here, where's my gift? Isn't that the first thing a child asks when you go visit them? Before, hey, how are you? It's where's my gift? Because as Indians, when we go somewhere, we bring a gift. Where's my gift? So he says, where's my gift? What have you brought? Again, Sudama's feeling quite bashful. He has that bag of rice with him. To show that in a palace like this, it's like going to a giant mansion, and you're supposed to bring food to eat for dinner, and you take Taco Bell. How would you feel? 7-star mansion kind of thing, and you walk in there with a burrito. It does not befit the occasion. And Sudama felt the same way. This great palace right here, they're eating on gold plates. I have 4 different kinds of parched rice. He felt very bashful. Knowing what was there, Bhagavan Krishna knows all. He goes and grabs that bag of rice. And then lovingly takes a large chunk of it, puts it in his mouth, and said, oh, this is amazing. What other gift, what else do I need when I have this? And his statement is, I don't need anything because I have this. He takes one mouthful and eats it. Then again, I really don't need anything else in the world, one more mouthful. And this is true, given in Bhagavatam. What happens next? 3rd mouthful he goes for, Rukminiji stops him holding his hand. Her fear internally is, he keeps saying, I don't need anything, I don't need anything. One more mouthful of this dumb rice will leave me also. And Bhagavan, that is enough, please. You made your point. Puts his hand up. But what does Bhagavan say when he sits down? He says to Sudama, whatever you offer me with full love and great intention, I will take as the greatest thing in the world. It's not about the object. Whatever a devotee offers wholeheartedly is the most pleasing to me. He says in Gita also, Patram pushpam phalam toyam, whatever you give, be it a leaf, flower, fruit, whatever it is, given with that greatest intention, pleases that Bhagavan. Conversely, you can give me wealth, you can give me great alankara, you can give me anything else. If it's done for some rajasic purpose, then that has no benefit. Intention is what matters. Not that just because I have means, that makes Bhagavan see me in a different light. That's not true at all. It's not how that works. Now in all of this, it's time for Sudama to head back home. And he thinks to himself, what was the reason he'd gone there in the first place? His wife sent him there. We're poor, get some kind of wealth, something material to help us subsist. Bhagavan talked about great stories. Bhagavan reminisced with him, went through and talked and talked and talked. Didn't give him anything. It's like going through a birthday party and then not getting a loot bag at the end. In my opinion, that's no party at all. You sing happy birthday, you better walk away with some bag with some goodies. That should be the rule. But they sat there and they simply reminisced over and over again. When we were at the brahmachari, I'm thinking one example of Sandipani, everything is coming back now. Our ashram in Powai is also called Sandipani Sadhanalaya, the abode of Bhagavan Sri Krishna's Guru, Rishi Sandipani. There, we would have these visiting swamis come to teach. Those that have been like our Swamiji, 30 years removed from the ashram. Those like Swami Shantananji or Vimuktananji, nearly 45 years removed from the ashram when they study, but same ashram. No matter what topic they're speaking on when they come, whichever text they're teaching, invariably, in the middle they pause, look around the lecture hall or look around the temple, their memories start coming back. Oh, there's those mango trees over there. When we were here, we used to go climb everything and bring them down. See that fence right over there, that brick wall? We used to climb over that to sneak out, and people didn't want us to know. All these memories start coming back. And they revel in that. So that's exactly what Bhagavan and Sudama were doing. Didn't give him anything in return, though. But on the way back, what is Sudama thinking? Thank God that Bhagavan didn't give me. Why? Because Bhagavan knows that when any material wealth is given, that often makes the sadhaka forget about Bhagavan at that point. Horror stories that we hear, right? The scariest horror story I've ever heard does not come from some zombie story or monster or ghost. It comes from Satyanarayana Katha. They say, I will do your vrata, then they don't, and their ships sink, and their wealth is all burned, their people die, everything like this happens, right? Those are the biggest horror stories. That when you make a promise, and you don't keep it up, then things go south right away. So, he says, people that get wealth forget Bhagavan. He didn't want me to fall for that mistake, therefore, he didn't give me anything when I came, is what he says to himself. But then, on his way home, he thinks he's gotten lost. Because where that humble hut he was living in with his wife is, suddenly there's this giant mansion sitting there. Golden walls, golden windowsills, looks beautiful there. Okay, did my GPS take me the wrong way? When you use Google Maps instead of Waze, that's what happens sometimes. Right? End up in the did that happen to me? So he's going around looking and he notices some woman standing in the entryway. Looks like his wife, but she looks well fed and dressed so well. He's going, that's probably what he's thinking at that moment, right? Who is this person? It is his wife. And she says, yeah, this just kind of happened, you know? That is that Bhagavan's kripa. Because there's something that's popular today in some religions. It's called the prosperity gospel. Where if you donate, if you believe, you will become rich. That is the carrot to want to do anything good, is to become rich. Sanatana Dharma makes no offer like that. In fact, Yagna is what's mentioned as spiritual growth, renouncing from things. But even then, Bhagavan compassionately refuses to grant the prayer of wealth for short-sighted devotees that want that for a certain reason. He refuses to give that to them. Anything short-sighted for that matter. There are certain temples in India where, as funny as it is, people actually believe this. There's one temple, if you want a visa to go abroad, that temple will grant that for you. You go and you pray there, that'll happen for you. You know, it's not fair to laugh. Bhakti is bhakti, Shraddha is Shraddha. There is evolution in the kind of Shraddha that we have, though. That Shraddha versus the material short term is of one type. That Dridata, the firmness of that Shraddha is also very, very tiny then. That Shraddha that persists no matter what circumstance there is, that is the faith to cultivate then. In the Mahatmyam of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's an extension of Mahabharata, that first section right there. Now, Kunti Devi says something very beautiful to Bhagavan Krishna there. She says, I want to thank you for all the hardships you've given me in my life. Kunti Devi said, what hardships did she have to go through, if we were just to assess? Having a child the way she did, her firstborn, to avoid scrutiny and great censuring, she had to give that firstborn child away. Only to see him get eventually killed by her other child in battle. Then her entire married life ended quite soon. Her husband died, she was a widow right away. From that point onwards, living with 5 virtuous great children, but having to fend for their lives the entire time. Going through all of that, seeing her entire lineage get destroyed, seeing the family fight each other, having to live that kind of a life. And at the end of all of that, she turns to Bhagavan Krishna and says, thank you for all of these hardships. Why? It made me remember you the entire time. That for me being fickle-minded, I couldn't have remembered you when things were happy. I was only seeking you, having you in my mind when hardships were there. Thank you for every single hardship you gave me. Now, this is an attitude and a mindset very rare to find. Vidura had the same mindset as well. At the end of his days, he says, what else is there to seek than your feet, that refuge to find in you? Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama is all he says. So yesterday's focus, we can say, was on the validity of these stories and seeing that the Leela of Bhagavan Krishna is so diverse with so many elements to it. Today's focus was more, how do I use these stories in my own life as a sadhaka to understand how to forge my path and tackling what lies ahead. So 3 more days. Let's see what fun things we do going forward. So with that, we will end for today. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate